Um, Today, as Jackie said, I just wanted to spend a few minutes giving you a quick overview of the report that we published earlier this month called The Root Causes of Child Morning Hunger. And we've collated a lot of evidence that exists from across the sector to help us better understand those key drivers of child morning hunger, those reasons that mean children, young people across the UK are turning up to school hungry. So a lot of this is evidence that's drawn from across the sector, from external data, from government data sets, and so on. So much work from other organisations has also allowed us to do this, and for that we are very, very grateful. Next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to start a little bit with the why. Why is it important for us to better understand these root causes? And I think this iceberg model helps to explain. So some of you may have seen this before, but we can see right at the top there, above the surface, so to speak, are the observable events. And these are sometimes referred to as the symptoms. So in our case, the symptom is the hunger. It's the thing that we see every morning. But we need to look beneath that surface to really help us understand why we see this symptom in the first place. And perhaps we can look at the trends and patterns, as it says there. For example, we could look at data on food insecurity, and that might help us to track the prevalence of hunger over time. And we can assess those trends to understand whether this is going up or down, it's staying the same, and so on. But it's still not really telling us why. So we need to delve even deeper. And we look at those structures and mental models that are more rigid and more deeply embedded in our society. And that's what we did with the root causes research, try and unpick some of these things and put a framework around it. And as you can see in the bottom left of this slide, what we found was a web of interconnected issues. And we saw how national policies and infrastructure kind of impacted on the community infrastructure and the household challenges, and how all of these things intersect and result in child morning hunger. And so trying to unpick that complexity, I think, was probably the most difficult part of this research. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a really wordy slide. This is my attempt of fitting the content of an entire report onto one slide. So I'm not expecting you to read it all, but you will have access to this afterwards. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. So I'll try and kind of walk us through it. What you see here is the framework that we use to present the root causes. So starting left to right, you can see those big systemic challenges around poverty and housing and social security. And then we move into the middle, and we've got the challenges that exist at more of a local level, perhaps logistical challenges, cultural barriers, school funding, and so on. And then on the right-hand side, we've got those individual or household challenges, such as family welfare, health, well-being, additional needs of children, young people, and more. And beneath each of those blue boxes, I've highlighted some of the key evidence points, but the report itself contains a whole host of evidence within it. So, for example, on the left, we can see data from recent government publications showing that 72% of children, young people living in poverty are in working families. Or we can see how families of children with special educational needs and disabilities are facing a double disadvantage as parents, perhaps leaving employment to support their child's needs or changing their working hours. This helps us to understand the really big picture stuff. And then likewise in the middle, we've got some more of those localized challenges. So for example, you can see that bottom one there, bottom bullet point, families in Scotland speaking about how transport is a barrier to children accessing activities before or after school. So it might be too expensive, might be unreliable, might be poor timetabling or scheduling. And you can see how this is something that might not be relevant across the entire country, but it is relevant in certain areas. And on the right, we can see, for example, how children, young people say that they lack time to eat breakfast, or we can see the prevalence of mental health challenges in young people from NHS data. Or perhaps children, young people are worried about their body image, and this can lead to morning hunger. So you can see, again, this isn't for every single person, but these are the kind of more localized household and individual challenges that we see. On to the next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see, it's a really kind of huge web of challenges that causes child morning hunger. And trying to kind of do that justice within a few minutes is not really possible. So I'd highly recommend you go away and have a look at the report. But also I wanted to spend a few minutes just thinking about what next. So taking a quick snapshot here from Magic Breakfast's Nourishing Futures strategy that we launched about 6 months ago. And that's our forward look to 2040. So when we launched it, it was a 15-year strategy, but about 14 and a half years left to go. And as you can see here in that green box on the left-hand side, there's a bit about our evolving role. And one of those points is our evolving role from provider to provider plus catalyst. So as Magic Breakfast, we remain committed to providing the breakfast and supporting schools and really tackling those symptoms. However, we're also really keen to help address those root causes to break the link between that cause and the symptom. So, for example, I mentioned a moment ago about those transport challenges in Scotland. And if that's a root cause, then we need to ask ourselves, well, is it Magic Breakfast's role to campaign for better transport links? And I would say probably not. But I think it is our role to help adapt and shape breakfast provision based on our understanding of those challenges. It's also our role, perhaps, to then partner and mobilize with sector partners. There's already really great people who are doing work around improving local and home to school transport. So how do we work alongside them? Are we perhaps sharing evidence or highlighting our joint challenges or doing joint campaign activity to ensure that actually these things aren't seen as separate issues and we recognize the overlap there and what that means for children, young people and families? And then the last thing that I just wanted to mention is that bottom point about Magic Breakfast moving from being designed by adults to being child-led. So whilst we have an idea of the root causes of child morning hunger, and as I say, we've drawn across a whole sector's worth of evidence, what we want to do is make sure that we're centering those voices of lived experience to help us understand the impact of those challenges, but also then ensuring that those children, young people, and those individuals with lived experience have the opportunity to help shape the solutions. And that's something that you'll see more at as Magic Breakfast implements our Nourishing Futures strategy. We want to make sure that what we're advocating for is led by the voices of children, young people, and led by those people who are affected by the root causes and those challenges. So just really quickly, in the last minute or so, I just wanted to summarize the kind of things that I've covered and 3 takeaway points for you. Number 1 is that child morning hunger is a really complex web of interconnected issues. It's not a simple thing. It's not one thing that's causing it, and hopefully you'll see that from some of our other speakers. Point number 2, we need to understand how those large systemic challenges affect at a local level, so within schools and local communities, and then understand that how in turn those have an impact on families and children, young people every day. And then the final thing is Magic Breakfast's role in this. So both as a provider to address the symptoms of child morning hunger and as a catalyst for change. And I just wanted to leave you with that quote on the right-hand side from somebody much, much wiser than I will ever be. And it's from a lady called Wangari Maathai, who's the first African female to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She's also the first female professor in Kenya and founder of a fantastic movement called the Green Belt Movement. And she says, we often preoccupy ourselves with symptoms, whereas if we went to the root cause of the problems, we'd be able to overcome the problems once and for all.